From books to art, let's shift now to Recycled Propaganda, a socio-political artist out of Las Vegas who uses his succinct graphic commentary to explore a variety of current issues, prompting critical thought in a society drunk on apathy and escaping reality. Take a look.
I was always very conscientious, even in England. Like I was born and raised in England. I've lived in the States like 3.5 years. Moving here is what made me into sort of like a activist, you could say. And I had sort of a lot of anxiety about like how I'm making the world a better place, and I was gonna, go and join the Peace Corps or do all this cliched stuff. And I sort of took some time off and thought, why don't I use like my own skill sets and my own passion, which is like creating stuff either digitally or like physical art, to sort of make a difference. So that's when them two came together, was sort of as an outlet for my social angst of living in America.
Was there a particular incident that made you turn to activism? You said when you moved to the States, was it just the political culture here, or was there a particular incident?
It wasn't like bam, oh my god, it was like a slow pressure cooker thing. And obviously, like, there's a stereotype that Americans are very ignorant, but you sort of, all the stereotypes I sort of always take with a pinch of salt, and then you move here and people don't know where any country is or anything going on, and you're like, oh, Israel and Palestine, they're like, what's that? And you're like, it blew me away. That coupled with like the way people eat and just the whole ethos of living, like all this moaning about gas prices, which always blows my mind. Even a lot of pieces I do, like that shelling one back there, I think is like a fairly straightforward rhetoric, even though a lot of it has ambiguity in. And everyone's like, yeah, that's like how they're killing us with gas prices. And I'm like, nah, not really, but go ahead if you want to take that. That's great. But yeah, stuff like that, just a very insular point of view, I guess, to summate all of what I'm trying to say. So once you start not caring or not being involved about stuff around the world, then that just moves to not caring about stuff that happens in the country or in the state or in the city or in your own life. And I think it's just about sort of succumbing to whatever people succumb to instead of like having that thirst for knowledge.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It does, of course, eventually translate to your own community. I'm curious as well because, like the Major League Bullshit piece behind you, do you just have a really good bullshitometer? Because I feel like there are people who watch the news in the US but would never link what's happening to like the capitalism piece behind you. There's no talk about like the real issues. There's no talk about how capitalism is destroying our country and our world. How did you make the step from like watching the news to then saying actually capitalism is fucked?
I think that that's quite a deep question, and I think it comes from just the notion of critically analyzing stuff. And I think for me, I think that started with myself. So like, why do I behave this way? Why do I do these things? And then once you sort of like, and university helps as well. School is very matter of fact. I always used to get in trouble at high school being like pedantic. But then you go to university and they want you to be pedantic because that's the sort of notion of research and stuff. So I think it started with like a self exploration and questioning, which I think everybody does or should do like in their early 20s. And then that sort of extended because I was in this new environment to the society that I was in. And it's always easier to analyze a society when you're not part of it.
And how does what you've seen here, and how does your art about the U.S. How would you compare the political situation here compared to England?
It's a really divided country, I would say, just like it is here. Like in the last election, you have the socialists still, and you have this new breed of like national party of like extreme, like hateful and racist ideologies, in my opinion, coming through because of mainly because of like immigration propaganda and everything is somebody else's fault and just stuff like that. Sort of like you have here, maybe less so now. But yeah, I definitely see a lot of things as um, following the US. That being said, when the English um, media are commentating on certain things, it's definitely with a British like skew. So whenever they're reporting about, because I watch the English news here sometimes still, whenever they're reporting about like gun violence, they still report on it in with the guise of like, these guys are idiots, they still have no gun control. Where so like there's still huge differences, but yeah, it's scary how kind of similar they are.
What is your goal with recycled propaganda? Are you pushing for thought as opposed to, the blind acceptance of propaganda, which is the whole point of propaganda, that people don't question it? Talk a little about what your goals are for recycled propaganda and what you're trying to put out there.
I think you totally hit the nail on the head, and a lot of people sort of get confused about sort of what that means and what it stands for. And it's kind of, to me, you can't teach people what to think. You could have to teach them like how to think. It's about trying to critically analyze any situation. So it's not about teaching you like, okay, GMOs are bad, this is good, and all that. It's about being like, okay, well, why don't you watch a bunch of different stuff, talk to a bunch of different people, make up your own mind. So all of the artwork is sort of directed to a perspective that there is no wrong or right answer. So whenever I do any events and people are like, what does this mean? I'm like, well, what do you think it means? Because that's the beauty of art, is ambiguity. And that's sort of why I've used art, other than like having a background into it, to promote that. Because I feel like the origin of most of the problems are not thinking about it. And it sounds really simple. So then how do you get people to think? Art's a great way to get people to think. And especially ambiguity through art. So when people have to look at it for a second, they're like, what does that mean? Oh, it means this. And then someone else waits for a second, what does that mean? Oh, it means something different. And that's beautiful, because that's life, and we're not all going to agree on stuff, but at least we can ponder it for a second before being like so certain. And here everybody's so confident that they're right and everybody else is wrong. And that's just, I don't know, there's massive levels of cognitive dissonance. How many people would really change their mind about something? How many people do you know that are religious that were raised as a different religion? Like nobody, because nobody really questions much about their environment, including myself. So if we just start to question a little bit about our own environment, about our own country, about our own state, I think art is a good segue into that.
For more on Isaac and his work, check out recycledpropaganda.com.